Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Homecoming Season 2, Episodes 6 and 7, which are called Needle and Again, respectively. Final two episodes of the season, so it's a kind of a weird numbered season and with 7 episodes, but so we're here to talk about the final two and see how we feel. Obviously, full spoilers for the episodes and, of course, the season as a whole at this point. Episode 6 is the shortest episode of the season, and it is pretty much just the what happened before the start of the show. Which is frustrating. It's probably anyone who'd already watched the whole season before we got to that point, and I know many people did because we kind of like wavered on it a little bit, and they heard our opinions of the last couple of episodes and the last time we reviewed this. I have to expect they were probably expecting us to complain about this one as well, because our general feeling from the last two episodes is that we didn't really need to have to go through beat for beat all this build up, because what actually happened isn't that interesting. Once it clicked early on, the rest of it's not that exciting. There was one or two little stylistic moments in how they shot something that I liked. There was one moment, there was like an aerial shot of the trees as she was running through the forest. I thought, oh, that's kind of nice shot. There's little things like that, but
they did the thing I remember them doing in the first season with the cars, with the still camera on the back of the truck, which is not unique but unusual. And they used it, and I was like, oh yeah, the first season did that, and I remembered liking that touch then.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, and this, I don't want to reiterate what we said last time too much, but just to kind of make one final point on it, is that because the actual events of what this is building up to, like typically when you tease an event later in the timeline and then you go back, first of all, you don't usually spend a full 2 episodes showing it in detail, but usually when you go back, it's because there's going to be extra elements that we didn't see coming, or there's extra elements that add new context to a lot of it to make it kind of interesting, or the final event so weird, the thing that it sets up is so weird that we genuinely just can't figure out how it gets there. Maybe like soon before we get there, because all the pieces are starting to fall in place, but it's not something that's as clear as, I think, and simple as this is from an early point. It's
very straightforward.
Because ultimately, the actual, like, okay, she's going there and she's going to try and drug him. Obviously she set that up at the end of the last episode. In this episode she started with practicing on the melon. That's what she got that for. She was just trying to practice a stabbing motion, get herself right. And ultimately there's not really anything that interesting about, how did she end up getting injected with it instead. It's not that much of a exciting idea.
I would say the only interesting element for me, and I say this, and it was a 50-50 toss-up as to, did he inject her on purpose? Did he know what was going on and actively use it against her, knowing what it would do, or was it just, as we see here, self-defense?
Yeah, and I have to admit, the self-defense moment felt really contrived to me, because it stabbed her right in the place that you would typically inject someone with a needle. That felt really odd to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I had to look away.
Oh, you had to look away.
As soon as I saw her coming in, I was like, nope.
No, because she gets basically stabbed. I mean, and I think that's the first episode kind of showed this as well, but it's basically in the arm, where, typically around that area where you would put a needle in someone. Not the only place you would stab someone with a needle, but it's one of the main places you would go to where you find the vein.
Into a vein or an artery, so it's effective.
Yeah, and it's this like slow motion thing where he's watching, like, I think it's her phone drops from her pocket, or maybe her car keys, I think it is.
No, it's the phone, I think.
No, it's not, because it's not a smartphone I'm thinking about now. I thought phone because it looks like an old flip phone, but it's not. I think it's like a car.
No, you're right, yeah.
A car, like, button, doohickey. And it's like this slow motion thing where it's falling and he's sort of reacting in slow motion, and he kind of goes to block, he sort of grabs her arm and blocks it, and the way it just kind of comes around and perfectly goes into her own arm, it feels convenient. A bit contrived. It's a bit too perfect, almost silly in how it wraps up. But
I almost think it would have been more interesting if he did know what this stuff did and actively used it against her, right? Once she started coming after him, it would be a different season at that point, but it would be like, okay, establishing the morality of Walter and what he did, and and understanding how he's maybe a different character to what he was last season, given the events that he went through.
Yeah, and I mean, the episode, ends with, like, she calls, Alex calls Audrey, and gets a bit of a phone call, because you remember she woke up in the boat with the phone in her hand. It's because she was literally, because she knew she was about to forget her girlfriend, so she phones her and tries to warn her about Walter and saying what's going on. That doesn't really get all of it out, of course, and it ends with just, oh, the stage has been set up for the party the next day, and it's just kind of like, that's where we end that episode on. And I think episode 7 is, it's like, there's things I like about it, there's ideas in it I like, and there's elements of it that feel like they go a bit too far with how much they repeat from what we saw in episode 2.
Yeah, the first like full 7 or 8 minutes, it's got a little extra couple of little snippets, don't get me wrong, but it's mostly just those first 2 episodes, and that felt a little frustrating.
I was feeling it as Audrey was talking to Geist, but I thought what was going to happen, because they'd already shown us a quick scene of Geist encountering Walter, because he sort of arrives behind the farm when he's trying to go to the building, and I thought that Walter was going to like walk out as if, you know, like he was there listening to that conversation the whole time that we didn't know, and I thought that's why we were seeing that scene again specifically. But then it just kind of like the entire scene just kind of played out, and I'm like, oh, there was nothing new, really.
Yeah.
So we're just. That was weird.
I have a question for you at this point. Do you think you would have enjoyed the season more if, and this is a very simple change, not even changing the content, but just the structure, if instead of flashing back after 2 full episodes and then having 4 episodes of flashback, if instead we just have like the opening scene of her waking up on the boat, realizing she has no memory, and then flashing back and just kind of playing it straighter from there. And then we can have all those events that were in the rest of the first 2 episodes of all the mystery and the stuff that we're going on at Geist, that we've got at the start of this episode, we can kind of do in real time and not have to watch it again.
I might even go far, because I thought about this. This is not a weird question. I thought about this as I was watching these last couple of episodes. I don't even think I would have shown anything at the start. I think I would have played this completely linear from start to finish, and I think not knowing where it was going, because this is the problem I had with episode 6 specifically, is that there's so many moments where there's this slow build up of what's going to happen next, where it's like slowly walking up to a room, or like when Walter and Alex or I'll just call herself Jackie, but they're questioning each other in the car, because at first I was like, why is he apologizing? He did catch her in a lie, but it's clear that he's actually fishing for information. He's basically turning the tables on her and trying to find out who she is and why she's there. But there's so much like suspense moments, and even when it's repeating stuff from the this is the one that bothered me the most, because this was technically new footage. It was right at the start of episode 7, and there's a sequence before Geist takes the stage. There's this sort of build up as he's like looking at the stage and he's going down the stairs, and I'm like, we've already seen the speech he makes. There's nothing actually exciting in this build up. We know where this is going. And I feel like trying to mimic the structure almost of season 1 has been a detriment to the story, because I think everything that happened in the last, not the 7th episode, but episodes...
The 4.
4 through 6, right? Those 3 episodes. I feel like those 3 episodes were basically neutered by this being out of order.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I said, I left that, would you enjoy it more with that tease at the start? Because I'm just assuming, they want to do this, idea of showing you the event at the start and then going back. But now that you mention it, episode 6 in particular, I think, might have actually been a really strong episode. If we didn't know the outcome, if we didn't know,
exactly.
Oh, she's going to end up on this boat.
Because
whereas the whole time, like, she's going to be on the boat, it's fine, don't care.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's actually shot very well, but there is zero mystery to what's about to happen. And I mean, like you said, okay, did he do it intentionally? Is it more of like an accident and self-defense kind of thing? Like, what was the like? That's so
not
minor.
Interesting enough, is it?
It's so minor in the overall context that I think this season, I would still think it was kind of redundant, and I wouldn't necessarily want it to exist. But I think the execution would be so much better if it was just played out in order. I think having anything set before and doing it out of order has made all that build up to that moment, and the event's not that exciting or interesting on its own. If we didn't know what was going to happen, it may be somewhat exciting, because it's like, okay, where's this going? What's going to happen? It might have been something.
I can imagine not knowing where this was going to happen, her practicing her stabbing on the melon, being like, oh, is it gonna be successful? Because she tries it 3 or 4 times. It only works once, right?
Yeah.
at the end, I'm like, oh, was that enough practice? Is she going to pull it off in the moment?
And that was another scene that just kind of I was left completely cold by, because I don't care about you practicing to do something when I know it fails already. Like, it just
right.
There's nothing
Whereas if
interesting
we
about
didn't
it.
know, maybe this has some effect.
Yeah, because the problem wouldn't be that she does ultimately fail. That's fine for it to go that way, but we wouldn't know, so we'd be like, oh, is she going to pull it off? Is she going to do this awful thing to Walter and take away his memory?
Would be like a battle of wills, especially episode 6. You know, the whole drive out into the forest, all that stuff would be this whole battle of who's going to win, essentially. Whereas the whole time we know it's taken away all the tension that it's trying to build in the filmmaking is gone.
You either have to do it in order, or you make these flashbacks, like you still want to start with her waking up on the boat and you want to go through the sort of the mystery element from that point of view, then fine. But I think you have to like cut all of this stuff from episodes like 4 through 6 up and just show snippets of it, just snippets here or there. She's maybe remembering little things or getting clues to little things, and it has to be much more fragmented. And
I wonder if it wouldn't be better to have essentially 1, 2, and 7 as the main episodes, and then everything else just kind of interspersed within the, as 10, 20 seconds fragments, maybe longer if you want to, and make it just, essentially 3-hour-long episodes.
Yeah. I don't even know if it needs it all, though. That's the thing. Like I said at the start, this feels like it's a drawn out movie, and I do genuinely feel that. I think this would even benefit from just being half the length. I feel like, and even though the episodes aren't that long, because they're episodes, because it's 7 of them, it does amount to a long movie in the sense that the runtime. I mean, they average it about 30 minutes an episode, so
it's probably around, once you take off a lot of the credits, probably around 3 hours 10, 3 hours 20.
Yeah, that said though, the credits do technically have stuff happening during them.
I mean, not count that bit. There's an extra minute or minute and a half after of just black actual credits.
Right. So I like that would be like, even generously say that's 3 hours. Let's just say give them the 3 hour runtime. It would probably been too generous there, but let's say that's what it is. I think you cut another hour out and you have a potentially solid 2 hour movie structured properly with the concept.
I agree.
Because the actual ending, because basically once Geist and Walter are together, and Geist, we know, is unhappy with what's going on, and he invites Walter inside. I'm like, okay, this is kind of exciting, these two being together, and what are they going to do? And what they actually do, which is essentially spike the punch at the party, so everyone there is drinking the memory loss drug, is actually quite a fun little idea. And I was kind of into that. Every time it cut to, and I don't dislike Joan Cusack. I like her in other things, but I do not like her character in this. So every time it cut to her, or when she's like lying in the field towards the end and Geist is talking to her, I'm like, I don't care about this. Stop this. Go away. Cut away.
I was almost expecting a twist at the end of that scene where she didn't actually drink it. She's just playing along with whatever, seeing everyone else pass out, and she's just like, oh, I can make him think it is, and he walks off, and she manages to take some of the plant for herself.
I felt like it was almost like avoiding doing the interesting elements here, like Alex / Jackie, when she discovers essentially what she was doing, when she talks to Audrey, and Audrey kind of explains parts of who she is, and when she explains what she does for a living, she's like, that's a job, and it's like, you made it a job. Like, you can tell she's almost a little disgusted by who she is, and I'm like, yes, do something with that. Do something with her, like, basically with a complete blank slate, but able to analyze who she is as a person. Is she okay with that? That's actually fascinating.
That's the end of Act 1.
It should be, technically, yes.
in most stories, that's the end of Act 1, is that realization, and then what do they do from there is the rest of the movie.
I'm okay with it being towards the end, but I just feel like it has to have more of a real meat to it. Because the other thing that I didn't quite like in this episode, as much as I like what Walter and Geist do, Walter's whole thing where he wants more of the drug to just forget his whole life, I thought was really contrived and weird and didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
No, I don't quite get the appeal here.
Because his justification is that the memories he does have is a reminder of what he's missing. And I'm like, so you want to be a blank slate? I'm like, why would you want to lose more? I don't know. I just don't understand
then you're just going to wake up and be like, well, now I don't know anything. And it's just going to start again, right? He's just going to go hunting for who he was.
Yeah. That was really odd to me, and I felt like it wanted to have this triumphant feeling because after everyone's taken the drink and they all kind of pass out for a bit, and Walter's kind of walking through like just all the employees of the building, all just lying down, and it ends up with him like facing Alex / Jackie one last time, and she doesn't remember who he is, and I was and I really was expecting / hoping here, and this is kind of getting back to what I was saying about wanting to do more with her, kind of like essentially having an opinion of who she is now that she's sort of seen it from this outside perspective because she's a completely fresh person. I was kind of hoping for like a genuine kind of like, I don't know exactly what I did to you, but I want to apologize, or I wanted some sort of atonement in this moment.
I agree. I was actually really surprised because the final kind of moment between Alex and Audrey is about about whether or not they were going to have a kid, and the name Olive. And that was one of the big last conversations that she had with Walter as well in the car. I honestly thought he maybe overheard some of this conversation and was going to kind of give her a little bit of information about who she was. Just to maybe not all the bad bits, but just something to help her because he understands what it's like. He's just been through it. And as you say, he didn't mean to wipe her memory. It was, self-defense. So it kind of feels weird that he didn't do anything.
Yeah, and there's kind of the only sort of nice thing that Alex does at the end is she says, "No, I'm not going to leave because I know what it's like to wake up like this, like confused and alone." So she's going to be there for Audrey, even though she doesn't necessarily feel anything for her yet. So I mean, there's that small nugget, but I felt like there was more that it needed to do with its ideas. There's a lot of interesting ideas here because even Joan Cusack's character, who I'm not like in love with by any means, there's a moment where she says to Geist, "I was supposed to, give my daughter away at our wedding like next week," and I thought, like, again, I was expecting an emotional beat where she was going to say something like, "Oh, can you at least tell me that when I wake up?" Like that's the important thing. Everything else I can forget and I'll accept that it's gone. Like I'll make that choice now to accept that it's all leaving.
But let me be there for my daughter.
Yeah,
this idea of she does have some humanity in there.
Yeah, but again, it never. And I know it's like, okay, you're saying you wanted it to do these specific things and it's not doing it, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to do those specific things. These were just examples in my head that I was thinking of, or expecting similar beats or similar feeling beats to take place.
I think it's just because it doesn't do anything though with it.
No. We have this final beat with Walter in the car as he sees his file, and like he's got a choice of reading about who he was and all the stuff he missed. Which brings us back to kind of the fundamental problem we had with this season even existing, is that we like the ambiguous kind of ending to season 1, and this takes away all that.
Honestly, I feel like Walter in this season is borderline unrecognizable from the character that we followed through season 1.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been any character whatsoever. If you just say, "Oh, we can get the actor back," you could write this exact role for anyone, and it would work 100%. It didn't have to be our character. In fact, it might have been better if it wasn't our character, because we wouldn't be projecting these things onto him.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be very easy to just say it's one of the other guys who was in the... We could have taken like a minor character from season 1 and said, "Oh, you get a slightly bigger role this year because you're getting to do this part."
You mean like they did with Audrey?
Oh yeah, true. Yes, like we did with Audrey. Yes.
Yeah, but why not do it on both sides?
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think without us having this, we really want to protect the ending of season 1, right? We love that ending, that ambiguity, that final moment in the diner was fantastic. I feel like you can avoid all of this problem we have with trying to live up to that by just choosing any other character from the background.
What's so frustrating here is that I don't think either of us wanted this season to exist, and we think the end of season 1 is the perfect ending to the story, and I still stand by that, and I'm never going to watch season 2 again. But I don't think season 2 isn't without potential, in the sense that it gets like annoyingly close to broaching some really interesting questions and some really interesting analysis of human beings, and like, do our memories make us who we are? And the idea that someone, if they have a complete blank slate, which in a way is kind of Total Recall as well, a little bit as well. The idea that if you've got a blank slate and then you look at who you are, it's kind of like that old question, like, oh, if you could talk to your 8-year-old self, like, would they think you were an asshole because of who you've become as as an adult to be successful or whatever? It's that kind of similar.
It's kind of in reverse almost.
Yeah, but the idea being that if you were a completely blank slate who could just judge it without prejudice, who would just like, this is what you do. You do this for a living. You do this awful thing. How do you react to that? Are you disgusted by it because you've not went through the process of like basically just compromising at every
And
step along the way.
justifying it all to
Yeah.
yourself. It's natural to you. But like I say, you take it out away and look at it more, objectively.
Yeah, and I feel like, because essentially when you take someone's memories away, you are, like, in a way kind of killing them, because ultimately they're a new person after that. In a broad stroke, if they can't get their memories back, ultimately they're starting from some level of scratch again. And it is kind of interesting, like, and how do you define their relationships after? Like, if they're with someone, in this case with, Alex and Audrey, although both of them are going to be a blank slate, so I guess they're both just starting from scratch. But, like,
Yeah, and
for that first little bit though, like, what are you, like, okay, so your partner who's still got their memories expects to still be in a relationship, but you don't remember them, and maybe you like, do you feel anything now that your memory's been erased? And they're obviously being very helpful, they're being nice to you, they're trying to do everything they can to make you feel better, because you're, essentially going through like a medical issue because you're not remembering who you are or anything like that.
well, that's kind of what I'm saying. There's a very obvious real world parallel to this, which is Alzheimer's or dementia. The idea that okay, after a point, they're still a person. Of course they are, but they are not the same person that they were. That's a fundamental truth that a lot of people who suffer with that and who are in relationships with those people kind of have to come to terms with and learn to deal with.
Yeah, it's not a perfect comparison though, because in this case we're talking about people who are going to be fully functioning, healthy people afterwards, who don't need help. After, once a person who's lost their memory, in this case, once they've adjusted and they've essentially started their new life again, they're going to be fully functional adults at that point. And
of course, I'm just referring to the idea of them forming those relationships and how they perceive things. I think is very comparable, and I think the biggest problem with this season here is that it kind of presents these ideas as something to explore here, more or less at the end of the season, and it doesn't actually have anything to do with those ideas. It doesn't have any weight to discuss anything. It doesn't actually have any bite to it. It's just, hey, here's an idea, and that's it. Just kind of throws it out there, and it's underwhelming because of that.
And to be fair, I don't think season 1 necessarily explores ideas super in depth like the way we're describing here either. I think the difference is season 1 was so technically interesting that it made everything feel suspenseful. And what we were discussing for the first part of this review is how essentially the structure of this season essentially robbed itself of having that same quality. So we're looking at the core writing here, we're looking at the core ideas to make up the difference. And unfortunately, it's kind of coming up short on that front as well. And the overall result is that you end up with a show, at least seemingly both of us are on the same page here, where it just kind of feels lukewarm at best, where we're like, okay, it's not terrible, it's not like the worst thing ever, but I am just unengaged. I am unengaged with everything that's happening past a certain point.
Yeah, I agree. And like you say, season 1, maybe if we just go back and look at the writing, maybe it's on a similar level. I don't know. It's been a while. But it was raised by its technical qualities for sure. Like, it had the aspect ratio reveal is a technical reveal that works for the story and is one of the best technical reveals I've ever seen. Like, and it had weight and feeling and and meaning to it. And I don't know if anything in this season has lived up to that sort of idea of that feeling of it clicking together and kind of going, oh, that's what's going on.
Oh, I know. It didn't, for sure. There's no question.
I was kind of being generous for a second there. I don't know why.
I mean, it's one thing to be too harsh on it, but I don't think it even comes close. It's not in the same hemisphere as what season 1 was doing. And I think ultimately it boils down to a simple thing that we talk about with movies a lot, is just like sequelitis, where it's a sequel for the sake of a sequel, and they thought of something to do for the sequel, and it's not the worst thing ever, but ultimately it wasn't the sole idea. Like, there wasn't an inspirational idea for why they have to do another one. It was just, we want a second one. So here's what we came up with to justify it.
Yeah. I will say I am baffled by the people who seem to think this is better than the first season. I don't get it. And also, I am very slightly annoyed at the people who insisted we keep watching this, because I could have done with just never seeing this, and I'd have been happier.
I'm not mad I watched it. Like, it's not, like, it was fine.
No, I'm not angry, but I'm just, it's like a mild irritation. It's like, I could have done without that. Like, that was 3 hours of my life I could have listen to a podcast.
Yeah. Well, this is the double-edged sword. I think sometimes we have to, because I mean, it's double-edged in the sense for both the audience, but it's also double-edged in the sense that, like, sometimes I think we have to follow it where we will, okay, well, people want us to keep doing something. In this case, it was short enough and easy enough to do that we just did it. But there is this problem where people want us to keep doing something because they see something in it that we don't. And they really hope that it's going to click for us, that we're going to get into it, and then you'll be episode 3, episode 4, whatever it may be, whatever the milestone is, where it all comes together, that we're going to see what they're seeing, and we're going to sort of change our minds and praise. It almost feels like, and I'm not saying everyone who says you have to keep watching more of something, whether it's this or something else, has this in their intentions, but just, I do sometimes feel that there is almost a vibe of wanting to prove us wrong, and if we just watch more of the thing, we'll prove ourselves wrong, the show will prove us wrong. Is that I think we get to a point where people want us to continue something because they think it's better than we see it as, and then the double-edged sword is that one of two things: either we don't do it and someone will be mad at us because we didn't continue it, or we do continue it and then we're sort of on the other side of things where we don't think it's any better than what we originally thought it was. In some cases, our opinion might even go down, and we might even become more jaded because we're forcing ourselves through it. And at
arguably,
that point,
I would say that has happened on this particular.
And at that point, ultimately, like, all we've done is piss you off in a different way, and it's kind of this weird, frustrating thing. Now, sometimes I think in cases like this where it's short enough and whatever, like, sure, yeah, okay, we can sort of go through it and we'll see how we feel about the whole thing. But I mean,
did people enjoy us kind of feeling this way? Like, you know, these discussions of us kind of being like, well, this is why we didn't enjoy it. Do people enjoy this?
I think to an extent they do. I mean, it's different though, because I feel like when it comes to like bad movies, I know people enjoy the bad movies on streams, and they enjoy to a similar extent the bad movies on the Ace, because, you know, we'll rat and we'll rave and we can get kind of passionate about how stupid something is. TV shows are all a bit different, because when you don't like a TV show and you keep putting yourself through it, you kind of, it really starts to feel like homework, and it really starts to feel like something you're forcing yourself through, and you kind of start just...
Also, I would say just on that, when you watch a bad movie, there's an expectation, there's almost a fun factor of, oh, this is kind of juicy, right, to rip into.
Yeah, there's nothing juicy about discussing episode 17 of season 2 of a show that you already hate.
Right, and even this here, where after the first, you know, episodes, they asked us to come back and do more, presumably because they wanted us to change our minds. To those people who wanted us to change our minds and wanted us to see that it's got better, and we're here at the end, and arguably I think the structural problems showed itself worse as it went on, especially when we got to episode 6, where I probably enjoyed it less now than I would have said at the start.
It's funny because I feel like the problem with episode 1 2, one of the things we said is that it felt too linear, and in episode 3 shook things up. And episode 3 I think was by far the best episode and the most interesting one, because all of it felt like new information. But then once it started it just kept going in the same straight line from that point on, but also once it just started teasing what we already kind of knew we were building up to, the whole thing just got worse than it was in the first place, because it became more tedious to sit through, because none of that was that exciting anymore. It was just kind of like, okay, we're going through this checklist of all these beats.
Yeah, I can really see how you restructure this. So you start with roughly episode 3's stuff. You go from there. You don't show. You show a lot of, like, you know, who Alex is as a person, but when you get to her, you know, preparing this identity, you don't show all of the individual beats. You know, the stuff we described as the checklist, like the tattoo, her making the picture. You don't show all of those beats, and then you can still have her discovering them after she wakes up. Assuming, you know, we're going through this for the first time now, we don't know this stuff that's happening. You don't need to do all of the stuff that we did with her after, you know, in those first 2 episodes. You can condense it down, but some of those beats, if we hadn't seen them in the checklist-like section, it might be interesting there to see her experience this for the first time and trying to piece together this false identity. And I think that's, you know, like you say, you know, we did complain at the start, going, no, this was too linear. Ultimately, when it decided that it kind of almost took that critique that we were, oh, you thought this was too linear? All right, well, we'll take that on board. As if, you know, they were listening to that feedback as we said it. And then we watched the rest and we went, you kind of went too far in the other direction.
Well, that's the thing. It didn't really go too far in the other direction. If it went too far, it'd have been cutting around all over the place. The problem is once it jumped back, it was just a straight line again.
Yeah, I thought it was actually almost quite interesting in this final episode how we did cut around a little bit in the timeline with Walter. You know, like the previous night with him. You know.
Oh yeah, for basically the first time in the show, really, and in terms of properly doing that.
Yeah, where we were cutting back and forth between the day of the party and we went back to Walter with Leonard the night before. Like it was like, oh, this is interesting conceptually in terms of how we're playing these timelines now, where it's revealing this information bit by bit as it unfolds, almost like that should have been how it was the entire season.
Yeah, so I'm just going to round this up by saying it's just kind of a damp squib of a sequel, and I will rewatch season 1 of Homecoming probably someday because it was really good, and I will definitely not touch season 2. And if there's a season 3, I mean, it feels like this ends it, but if there is a season 3, I mean,
yeah, we thought season 1 ended it.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll see, but I mean, yeah, I like the moral choice of them saying no, we can't let this get out there because it's just going to cause too much damage. So this is how they do it. That was a fine idea. I think overall the season just was far too many missteps from a conceptual level, far too many missteps from an execution level, and this is what we ended up with, which is, I think, something that's just very unsatisfying almost the entire way through, bizarrely. So there you go. That is our discussion of the last 2 episodes of Homecoming Season 2. Apologies if that was too negative for you, but we weren't really that into it. So you can, of course, let us know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Like is really important on YouTube. Lets YouTube know that you want to recommend us to other people, and it'll recommend us a lot more. You can, of course, get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates if you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here. Financially, you can do that over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?